Welcome, dear listener, to another soothing journey through the mists of history with boring history for sleep. Tonight, we invite you to settle into a quiet corner of your mind, to let the worries of the day slip away like sand through your slough. Fingers, picture yourself reclining on a soft bed of moss, the air warm with the scent of olive groves and distant sea salt. As we wander back to the ancient world of Grecia, place where mortals and gods wove their lives together in intricate, sometimes peculiar patterns. Our tale tonight centers on the worshippers of the Greek gods, those devoted souls whose rituals and beliefs shaped their days and nights. Specifically, we'll explore the curious, often intimate practices that colored their devotion practices. That might seem strange or even startling to us today, yet were as natural as breathing to them. This is not a tale of high drama or breathless excitement. No, we'll move slowly, deliberately, through the rhythms of their lives, pausing to notice the textures of their world, the roughness of woven tunics, the flicker of oil lamps, the murmurs of prayers carried on the wind. Our journey will unfold in 12 parts, each a gentle step deeper into the ancient Greek soul, from the daily lives of worshippers to the grand myths of their gods, from the mysteries of their sacred rites to the contrasts between the humble and the elite. Some moments may touch on the raw edges of human experience devotion, passion, even struggle, but we'll tread carefully, keeping our tone calm, our words measured, so you can drift along with us, perhaps even toward sleep. So close your eyes or let them rest softly on the world around you. Imagine yourself standing on a sun-warmed hillside, the Parthenon gleaming in the distance, as we begin with the daily life of those who lived in the shadow of the gods. Let the rhythm of their world carry you gently forward. Daily life immersion. The pulse of devotion in ancient Greece. Imagine yourself waking with the first light of dawn in a small Greek village, nestled in the rocky hills of Attica, or perhaps along the windswept coast of Ionia. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of dew on wild thyme and the faint smoke of hearth fires kindled in the night. Your home, if you're an ordinary Greeka. Farmer, a potter, or a weaver simple, its walls of sun-baked mud brick or stone. Its floor-packed earth smoothed by years of footsteps. The rhythm of your life is tied to the land, the seasons, and, above all, the gods who govern both. Your day begins with a quiet act of reverence. Before you break your fast with a modest meal of barley bread and olives, you approach a small household. Alter a niche in the wall or a stone slab in the courtyard. Here, a terracotta figurine of Hestia, goddess of the hearth, gazes serenely over your offering. A few drops of olive oil, a pinch of grain, perhaps a sprig of laurel. You murmur a prayer, your voice low and steady, asking for protection, for harmony in the home, for the gods to turn their eyes toward your small corner of the world. This is no grand ceremony, no spectacle of priests and incense, but a private, intimate moment woven into the fabric of your morning as naturally as breathing. The Greeks believed the gods were ever present, their influence threading through every aspect of existence. From the moment you rose to the moment you lay down, your actions were shaped by the need to honor them, to avoid their wrath, to seek their favor. This devotion was not abstract or distant. It was tactile, immediate, rooted in the physical world. You might sweep the floor of your home not just for cleanliness, but to show respect to Hestia, whose sacred fire burned at its heart. You might pour a libation of wine onto the earth before drinking, a nod to Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy, whose gifts demanded gratitude. As you step outside, the village stirs around you. The clatter of looms echoes from a neighbor's house, where a woman weaves cloth dyed with madder root, her fingers moving in a rhythm as old as the hills. A farmer trudges toward his fields, his ox lowing softly, the plow's wooden blade scratching furrows in the rocky soil. Everywhere, the gods are invoked. The farmer whispers to Demeter, goddess of the harvest, as he sows barley seeds, hoping for a bountiful crop. The weaver, pausing to stretch her aching hands, offers a silent thought to Athena, patroness of crafts, for skill and patience. But devotion was not only a private matter. The community pulsed with shared rituals, especially in the realm of fertility, and renewal practices that, to our modern sensibilities, might seem strange, even shocking, yet were as ordinary to the Greeks as the rising sun. Many of these rituals revolved around the gods of love, fertility, and the earth. Aphrodite, goddess of desire; Dionysus, whose wild revels stirred the blood; and Demeter, whose mysteries promised life after death. These deities were not distant figures but forces that shaped the body and soul, their worship often entwined with the most intimate aspects of human experience. In spring, when the earth stirred from its winter slumber, villages held festivals to honor these gods. Imagine yourself joining a procession winding through the olive groves, the air thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers and the tanks of sacrificial smoke. Men and women, young and old, walk together, their voices rising in hymns that blend devotion with joy. Some carry baskets of figs and pomegranates, symbols of abundance. Others hold phallic emblems, crudely carved wooden figures, or woven straw effigies meant to invoke fertility, not just of the fields, but of the people themselves. These objects, startling to us, were not crude or shameful to the Greeks. They were sacred, a celebration of life's generative power, a plea to the gods to ensure the community's survival. At the heart of the festival might be a sanctuary, a small grove, or a stone altar draped with garlands. Here, the priestess of Aphrodite, her robes dyed saffron, pours honeyed wine onto the ground, the liquid sinking into the earth like an offering to the goddess's own heart. The crowd watches, some whispering prayers, others laughing softly, their faces flushed with the warmth of community and shared purpose. There is no shame in these acts, no sense of impropriety. To the Greeks, the body and its desires were gifts of the gods, to be honored openly, reverently, in rituals that bound the human to the divine. Yet life was not all festivals and offerings. The daily grind of survival demanded constant effort. You might spend your day tending vines, the sun beating down on your shoulders, your hands stained with grape juice as you coax the plants to yield their fruit. Or perhaps you're a potter, your wheels spinning as you shape clay into vessels for oil or wine. Each one marked with a simple prayer scratched into the wet surface. To Hermes, for safe trade. The gods were not just in the temples, but in the fields, the workshops, the marketplaces, their presence a constant hum beneath the surface of daily life. This intimacy with the divine extended to the most private corners of existence. In the evening, as you return home, the flickering light of an oil lamp casts shadows on the walls. Your spouse perhaps prepares a meal, the scent of lentils and herbs mingling with the smoke of the hearth. In this quiet moment, you might turn your thoughts to Aphrodite, not as a distant goddess, but as a force within your marriage bed. The Greeks saw no separation between the sacred and the sensual. To love, to create life, was to participate in the divine order. Couples might dedicate a small offering of flour to Aphrodite before retiring, a gesture as natural as locking the door. But life was not without its struggles. The harvest might fail, leaving your family hungry, the specter of want hovering like a shadow. Disease could sweep through the village, claiming lives with a speed that felt like divine displeasure. In such moments, you might visit a local oracle or healer, seeking guidance. These figures, often women, were believed to channel the gods' wisdom, their words a bridge between mortal and divine. You might offer a small clay figurine votive shaped like a womb or a phallus to a temple of Asclepius, god of healing, praying for fertility or recovery. These offerings, found in abundance by archaeologists, speak to the Greeks' deep hope in the god's mercy. their belief that even in hardship, the divine could be persuaded to intervene. The daily life of a Greek worshipper was thus a tapestry of labor, devotion, and ritual, each thread woven with care. The gods were not distant overlords, but companions in the struggle of existence, their presence felt in the sweat of the fields, the laughter of festivals, the quiet moments of love and loss. As the sun sets on your village, you might stand at your door, gazing at the stars, and offer one final prayer to Artemis, goddess of the moon, for protection through the night. The rhythm of your life, like the rhythm of this tale, is steady, unhurried, a gentle pulse that carries you toward rest. The life and influence of Sappho, poetess of desire. As the stars begin to speckle the night sky above your imagined Greek village, let us shift our gaze to a single figure whose words, like the embers of a fire, have glowed through the centuries. Picture yourself now on the island of Lesbos, the sea lapping gently against its rocky shores, the air thick with the scent of salt and wild sage. Here, in the 7th century BCE, lived Sappho, a poetess whose verses wove love, longing, and devotion into the tapestry of Greek life. Her story, though fragmented by time, offers a window into the world of worship and passion, where the gods, especially Aphrodite, shaped the human heart. Settle in. Let the rhythm of her life carry you forward as we explore her world with a calm, steady voice, inviting you to drift along the currents of history. Sappho was born around 630 BCE, likely in the city of Mytilene, the bustling heart of Lesbos. Imagine a young girl, her hair dark and curling, walking through streets lined with whitewashed houses, their rooftops catching the golden light of the Aegean sun. Her family was aristocratic, their wealth drawn from trade and land, their status granting her a life of relative ease compared to the farmers and weavers of our earlier tale. Yet Sappho's world was not one of idle luxury. Her mind was sharp, her spirit restless, and her heart attuned to the divine forces that pulse through human experience, particularly the intoxicating power of love, which she saw as the work of Aphrodite herself as a young woman. Sappho's life was shaped by the cultural rhythms of Lesbos, an island known for its poetry, music, and devotion to the arts. Picture her standing in a shaded courtyard, a lyre cradled in her arms, its strings humming softly as she plucks them. The Greeks believed music was a gift from Apollo and the Muses, but Sappho's songs were often dedicated to Aphrodite, the goddess who stirred desire and bound mortals in the delicate chains of longing. Her poetry, performed at gatherings of women or at festivals, was not mere entertainment, but a sacred act, a way to commune with the divine. Her words, sung in a clear, resonant voice, wove images of blooming roses, moonlit nights, and the ache of unfulfilled desire. Each verse a prayer to the goddess who ruled the heart. Sappho's role in her community was unique. She led a group of young women, perhaps a religious or cultural circle, where she taught music, dance, and poetry, preparing them for marriage or roles in sacred rituals. Imagine yourself among these women, seated on cushions in a garden fragrant with myrtle, Sappho's voice guiding you through a hymn to Aphrodite. The air is warm, the breeze carrying the distant sound of waves, and her words are not just poetry, but a bridge to the divine. These gatherings were intimate, almost familial, yet they carried a sacred weight. The women, adorned with garlands, might offer small gifts to Aphrodite's altar, a vial of perfume, a woven ribbon seeking her blessing for love or fertility. To Sappho, love was not merely personal, but cosmic, a force that mirrored the gods' own passions. Her poetry, though only fragments survive, reveals a world where the boundaries between mortal and divine were porous. In one surviving verse, she calls upon Aphrodite, not as a distant deity, but as a confidant, a companion in her longing. Picture her composing these lines by lamplight, her stylus scratching on papyrus, the words flowing like a quiet stream. "Come to me now, Aphrodite, and release me from harsh cares." Her poetry was intimate, direct, yet never crude. She described the trembling knees, the racing pulse, the fire beneath the skin that love ignites, but always with a delicate touch, as if tracing the outline of a flower petal. To Sappho, love was a sacred mystery, a divine gift that could both uplift and unravel the soul. But Sappho's life was not without its shadows. Lesbos was a place of political turmoil, and her family was entangled in its struggles. Her brother, Charaxos, sailed to Egypt to trade wine, only to fall into scandal when he spent a fortune on a courtesan named Doretia. Sappho, ever the poet of emotion, is said to have written verses chiding him, though her tone was more sorrowful than scolding. Imagine her standing at the edge of a cliff, the sea churning below, her thoughts heavy with worry for her brothers. Recklessness. The gods, she knew, could be as capricious as mortals, their favor fleeting. Yet even in these moments of personal strife, her poetry turned to Aphrodite, seeking solace in the goddess's eternal presence. The rituals of Lesbos, like those across Greece, often intertwined devotion with the sensual. Festivals for Aphrodite or Dionysus were common, and Sappho likely participated, her poetry a centerpiece of the celebrations. Picture a night festival, the air alive with the scent of burning resin and the sound of flutes. Men and women, their faces painted with ochre, dance in torchlit circles, their movements echoing the wild abandon of Dionysus. Sappho, perhaps, recites a hymn, her voice rising above the crowd, praising Aphrodite's power to stir the heart. These festivals could include acts that seem startling today, offerings of phallic symbols, dances that mimicked the act of creation, but to the Greeks they were sacred, a celebration of life's vitality. Sappho's role was to give these acts voice, to elevate them through poetry into something divine. Her influence extended beyond Lesbos. Her poems were sung across Greece, carried by travelers and performers, their melodies lingering in the air of symposiums and temples. She was called the 10th Muse by later admirers, a testament to her skill. Yet her life was not one of unrelenting glory. The political upheavals of Lesbos forced her into exile, at least once, perhaps to Sicily, where she lived apart from her beloved island. Imagine her in a foreign land, the air different, the god's presence less familiar. Even there, she wrote, her words a tether to the home she loved, to the goddess who inspired her. Sappho's later years are shrouded in mystery. Some say she married, perhaps to a man named Cercilas, though the evidence is thin. Others whisper of her love for women, a thread woven through her poetry, though the Greeks saw such bonds differently than we do. Less as a category than as a natural expression of desire. What is certain is that her work endured, copied onto scrolls recited in temples, cherished long after her death around 570 BCE. Her poems, though fragmented, survived the centuries, their words like scattered petals still carrying the scent of her world. As we linger on Sappho's life, imagine her final days, perhaps seated by the sea, her lyre silent but her mind alive with images of love and loss. Her devotion to Aphrodite was not just poetic, but personal, a lifelong dialogue with the goddess who shaped her art. Her story is one of passion, tempered by discipline, of mortal longing touching the divine. As the waves crash softly in your mind, let this tale settle, a gentle rhythm to carry you forward. The Eleusinian Mysteries and their sacred rites, as the echoes of Sappho's poetry fade into the night. Let us shift our journey inward to a place where the veil between mortal and divine grew thin. Picture yourself now standing at the edge of a sacred grove near the city of Eleusis, not far from Athens. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The stars above obscured by the flicker of torchlight. Here, in this hallowed place, the Greeks gathered for one of their most revered rituals, the Eleusinian Mysteries, a secret ceremony dedicated to Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone, queen of the underworld. These rites, shrouded in secrecy even in their own time, were a cornerstone of Greek spiritual life, weaving together themes of life, death, and rebirth with practices that might seem strange to us, yet were profoundly meaningful to those who participated. Settle in. Let the rhythm of this ancient ritual guide you gently forward. As we explore its mysteries with a calm, measured voice, the Eleusinian Mysteries were no ordinary festival. Unlike the open celebrations of Aphrodite or Dionysus, these rites were exclusive, open only to initiates who swore solemn oaths to keep their secrets. Imagine yourself as one such initiate, standing among a crowd of men and women, your heart steady but curious, your bare feet pressing into the cool soil of the sanctuary. The journey to Eleusis began days earlier in Athens, where you joined a procession along the sacred way, a 14-mile path lined with olive trees and small shrines. The air was alive with the hum of hymns, the scent of myrrh rising from portable altars, and the soft clatter of offerings, clay figurines, baskets of grain carried by the faithful. You wore a simple tunic, perhaps dyed with saffron or left plain, and a myrtle wreath crowned your head, its sharp scent a reminder of the divine presence you sought. The mysteries unfolded over several days, their structure carefully orchestrated. To draw you deeper into the divine narrative, the heart of the rite was the story of Demeter and Persephone, a myth that resonated with every Greek who toiled in the fields or feared the shadow of death. Demeter, the nurturing goddess of grain, had lost her daughter Persephone to Hades, god of the underworld. Her grief withered the earth until Zeus brokered a compromise. Persephone would spend part of the year below and part above, a cycle that mirrored the seasons. The Mysteries promised initiates a deeper understanding of this cycle, not just of crops but of human life itself, a glimpse of what lay beyond the mortal veil. As you approached the Telesterion, the great hall at the heart of Eleusis, the atmosphere grew hushed. The building was vast, its stone walls cool to the touch, its interior lit only by the flicker of oil lamps and torches. Imagine stepping inside, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs and the murmur of prayers. The rites were divided into stages: things said, things done, and things shown. The details were closely guarded, but we can piece together fragments from ancient sources and archaeological clues, like scattered pebbles forming a path. First came the purification. You stood by a stream, its waters cold against your skin. As priests poured libations and chanted, you might have fasted for days, your body light, your mind open to the divine. Then, in the Telesterion, the rituals began in earnest. Priests and priestesses, clad in flowing robes, recited hymns and performed sacred dances, their movements slow and deliberate, echoing the rhythm of the earth itself. Offerings were made: loaves of barley bread, pomegranates split open to reveal their ruby seeds, symbols of Persephone's dual life. These acts were not mere symbols, but bridges to the divine, each gesture a step closer to the gods. The mysteries were not without their intimate elements, though these were handled with reverence, not revelry. Fertility was central to the cult of Demeter, for she governed the earth's bounty. Some sources hint at rituals involving symbols of creation, phallic or yonic imagery, perhaps woven into wreaths or carved into stone. These were not crude displays, but sacred representations of life's generative power, meant to honor the gods who ensured the fields would bloom again. Imagine a priestess holding aloft a clay figure, its form unmistakable, yet treated with solemnity, as the crowd murmured prayers for abundance. To the Greeks, these acts were as natural as the sprouting of grain, a celebration of the cycle that bound humanity to the earth. The climax of the mysteries was the things shown, a revelation so profound that initiates spoke of it only in whispers. Some scholars believe it involved a dramatic reenactment of Persephone's return, perhaps with priestesses emerging from darkness into light, their faces radiant with divine purpose. Others suggest a sacred object, a sheaf of wheat, a statue, was unveiled, its significance resonating with the promise of renewal. Whatever it was, the moment left initiates changed, their fear of death softened by the belief in a cycle beyond mortal understanding. You might have stood there, your breath shallow, feeling the weight of the divine settle over you like a warm cloak. Archaeology offers glimpses into this world. Excavations at Eleusis have uncovered the Telesterions' foundations, its vast size hinting at the thousands who gathered there. Small votive offerings, terracotta pigs, symbols of sacrifice, have been found, their surfaces worn by countless hands. Wells and altars, stained with the residue of libations, speak to the ritual's tactile nature. These artifacts, mute yet eloquent, tell of a people who sought meaning in the earth's rhythms, who believed the gods walked among them. Yet the mysteries were not without their challenges. Initiates faced long journeys, physical exhaustion, and the weight of secrecy. The rites demanded commitment, time away from fields or looms, offerings that strained modest means. And always, there was the specter of divine judgment, a misstep in the ritual, a broken oath could invite Demeter's wrath, leaving crops to wither or families to falter. The Greeks knew the gods were not always kind. Their favor had to be earned through devotion and care. As the ceremony drew to a close, you might have joined the initiates in a final hymn, your voice blending with theirs, the sound rising like smoke into the night. The return to Athens was quieter, the procession weary but fulfilled, the sacred way now a path of reflection. The mysteries offered no simple answers, but they gave hope, a sense that life, like the seasons, held a promise of return. As you walked, the stars above seemed brighter, the air softer, the world a little less daunting. This glimpse into the Eleusinian mysteries reveals a culture where the sacred and the human were entwined, where even the most intimate aspects of life, birth, love, death, were offerings to the gods. Let this thought settle over you, a gentle weight, as we prepare to move forward. The elite and their sacred symposias. The echoes of the Eleusinian mysteries fade into the quiet of the night. Let us turn our gaze to a different corner of ancient Greece, where the air carries the scent of spiced wine and the murmur of cultured voices. Picture yourself now in a grand Athenian villa, its courtyard open to the stars, its marble floors cool beneath your feet. Here among the elite wealthy landowners, poets, and statesmen, the worship of the gods took on a different hue, one of refinement and ritualized indulgence. In this segment, we explore the lives of these privileged few, particularly through their sacred symposia, gatherings that blended devotion, philosophy, and sensuality in ways that both mirrored and contrasted. The daily lives of ordinary Greeks. Settle in, let the rhythm of their world guide you gently forward, as we weave this tale with a calm, steady voice. The elite of ancient Greece lived in a world apart. Their homes adorned with frescoes of gods and heroes, their tables laden with delicacies, roasted figs, honeyed cakes, fish from the Aegean. Imagine yourself reclining on a cushioned couch in an andron, the men's dining room of a wealthy household. The walls are painted with scenes of Dionysus, his ivy-crowned head, tilted in revelry, while oil lamps cast a warm glow over the room. The air is thick with the scent of myrrh and wine, and the soft strumming of a lyre fills the silence. This is the setting of the symposium, a ritualized gathering where the elite honored the gods, debated ideas, and indulged in pleasures that were both sacred and social. The symposium was more than a drinking party. It was a sacred act, a space where the divine and human mingled. As you recline, a young slave pours wine from a crater, a wide-mouthed vessel painted with images of nymphs and satyrs. The wine is diluted with water, a nod to moderation, though the night may stretch long, and offered first to Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy. A few drops are spilled onto the floor, the liquid catching the lamplight as it sinks into the earth, a libation to ensure the god's favor. The host, perhaps a wealthy merchant or a poet like Alcaeus, raises a cup and recites a prayer, his voice steady, invoking Dionysus to bless the gathering with joy and wisdom. These gatherings were exclusive, typically reserved for men of status. The women of certain roles courtesans known as hetaira sometimes joined, their wit and charm as valued as their beauty. Imagine a hetaira named Phryne, her hair adorned with gold pins, her laughter soft as she engages a philosopher in debate. These women were not mere entertainers, but skilled conversationalists. Often educated in poetry and music, their presence a bridge between the sensual and the intellectual. Their role in the symposium was complex, blending devotion to Aphrodite with the social dynamics of the elite. They might sing a hymn to the goddess, their voices weaving through the room, or offer a dance that echoed the sacred rites of fertility. Festivals, their movements graceful yet restrained. The symposium was a stage for devotion, but its rituals were refined, polished by wealth and education. Unlike the rustic festivals of the village, where phallic symbols were carried openly, the elite expressed their reverence through art and subtlety. A poet might recite verses praising Aphrodite, describing her as golden-throned or weaver of charms, the words themselves an offering. A sculptor might unveil a small statuette of Eros, its marble surface smooth as a lover's skin, placed on a table as a focal point for discussion. These acts were no less sacred than those of the common folk, but they were cloaked in sophistication, the raw energy of fertility rites, distilled into poetry and song. Yet the elite were not immune to the struggles that defined Greek life. Their wealth brought comfort, but it also brought responsibility to host lavish sacrifices, to fund temples, to navigate the treacherous waters of politics. Imagine the host of the symposium, his brow furrowed as he discusses a recent oracle's warning, perhaps a sign of divine displeasure. The gods demanded constant attention, their favor as fickle for the rich as for the poor. A failed harvest could ruin a landowner's fortunes, just as it could a farmer's. A plague could claim an aristocrat's child as easily as a weaver's. In these moments, elite turned to the same gods Demeter for abundance, Asclepius for healing, though their offerings might be grander, a bull sacrificed at an altar, its blood carefully channeled into the earth, rather than a simple clay figurine that the symposium also revealed. Contrasts in how the elite and the common folk approached the sensual aspects of worship. While villagers celebrated fertility with earthy rituals, processions with phallic emblems, dances under the open sky, the elite channeled these impulses into controlled settings. Love and desire, sacred to Aphrodite, were explored through poetry, or the presence of hetairæ, whose relationships with their patrons were both commercial and ritualistic. These women might dedicate a lock of hair or a golden trinket to Aphrodite's temple, seeking her protection in their precarious lives. The elite, too, honored the goddess in their private moments, perhaps with a whispered prayer before retiring to their chambers. But their devotion was discreet, veiled by wealth and propriety. Life for the elite was not all symposia and refinement. Their days were filled with duties, managing estates, negotiating trade, or serving in civic roles. Picture a wealthy Athenian, his tunic embroidered with silver thread, inspecting his vineyards under the midday sun. He pauses to pour a libation to Demeter, the earth warm beneath his sandals, aware that his wealth depends on her favor. Later, he might visit a temple to consult a priest about a political rival, offering a silver coin or a finely wrought vessel. The gods were as present in his life as in the farmer's. But his worship was shaped by privilege, his offerings more lavish, his access to oracles and priests more direct. The contrast with ordinary Greeks is stark yet subtle. While the farmer toiled in the fields, his prayers simple and direct. The elite wove their devotion into a complex tapestry of art, politics, and pleasure. The villagers' festival was a communal outpouring, raw and unfiltered. The symposium was a curated experience, its rituals polished but no less sincere. Both sought the gods' favor, both acknowledged the sacredness of life's generative forces. But their expressions reflected their worlds, one grounded in the earth, the other elevated by wealth and culture. As the symposium draws to a close, imagine the guests departing, their voices soft in the night air, the scent of wine and myrrh lingering on their cloaks. The host stands at the threshold, offering a final prayer to Dionysus for safe journeys, and to Hestia for the harmony of Lavos, his home. The stars above gleam like scattered coins, a reminder of the divine order that binds all Greeks, rich and poor, in a shared dance with the gods. This glimpse into the elite's world reveals a life of privilege tempered by duty, of devotion expressed through refinement rather than rawness. Let this thought settle over you, a gentle rhythm as we prepare to move forward. the rural devotee, and the cycles of worship as the soft glow of the symposium fades. Let us return to the humbler paths of ancient Greece, where the rhythm of life beat in time with the seasons and the will of the gods. Picture yourself once more in a small village, perhaps in the rolling hills of Arcadia, where the air carries the scent of ripening figs and freshly turned earth. Here, the daily lives of ordinary Greek farmers, shepherds, and their families were steeped in devotion. There, every task, a quiet offering to the divine. In this segment, we immerse ourselves again in their world, focusing on the cycles of worship that shaped their days, particularly those tied to fertility and survival, practices that might seem peculiar to us, but were as natural as the dawn to them. Settle in. Let the steady pulse of their lives guide you gently forward, as we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice. Imagine waking in a modest home, to walls of rough stone or mud brick, the roof thatched with reeds that rustle in the morning breeze. The first light filters through a narrow window, casting a soft glow on the packed earth floor. Before you rise, you pause at the household altar. A simple slab where a clay figurine of Hestia stands, her serene face worn smooth by years of reverence. You drizzle a few drops of olive oil into a shallow dish, the liquid catching the light as it pools, and whisper a prayer for the day ahead, plea for harmony, for strength, for the gods to watch over your fields and family. This small act, repeated daily, is the heartbeat of your devotion, grounding you in a world where the divine is ever present. Your life as a rural Greek is one of labor, each task a thread in the tapestry of survival. As you step outside, the village is stirring, goats bleat in their pens. A loom hums from a neighbor's courtyard, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoes through the morning air. Your day might take you to the fields, where you guide a wooden plow behind a pair of oxen, the earth yielding reluctantly under the blade. As you work, you murmur to Demeter, goddess of the harvest, asking her to bless the barley seeds you'll soon sow. The soil, dry and rocky, is a constant challenge, its bounty never guaranteed. Yet you persist, your hands calloused, your back bent, trusting in the gods' favor to see you through another season. Worship for you is not confined to temples or grand festivals. It is woven into the fabric of your work. When you pause to drink from a clay jug, the water cool against your lips, you pour a small libation onto the ground, a gift to the nymphs who guard the nearby spring. When you shear your sheep, there, wool thick and warm, you dedicate the first handful to Athena, patroness of weaving, hoping her skill will guide your wife's hands at the loom. These acts are small, almost instinctive, yet they bind you to the divine, a quiet rhythm that mirrors the turning of the seasons. Fertility, both of the land and the body, is a central concern. And the gods who govern it, Demeter, Dionysus, Aphrodite, are never far from your thoughts. In spring, when the earth awakens, you join your village in a festival to honor these deities. Picture yourself walking in a procession, the path lined with wildflowers, their petals brushing your ankles. You carry a basket of early fruits, pomegranates, figs, perhaps a few green grape, symbols of the abundance you seek. Others hold woven effigies, their shapes unmistakable, representing the generative power of life. These objects, carried openly, are not objects of jest but of reverence, a plea to the gods for fertile fields and healthy children. The air hums with hymns, the words ancient and familiar. As you approach a grove sacred to Demeter, its trees heavy with offerings tied to their branches dot the grove. A priestess stands before a stone altar, her robes dyed with madder, her hands raised as she pours a libation of milk and honey. The liquid seeps into the earth, a gift to the goddess who ensures the cycle of growth. The crowd sways gently, some singing, others praying silently, their faces lit by the glow of torches. There is no shame in the symbols or songs, no sense of impropriety. To you, these acts are sacred, a celebration of the forces that sustain life. The festival might include dances, their steps slow and deliberate, mimicking the act of sowing, seeds, or the embrace of lovers. These movements, though bold to our eyes, are as natural as the wind rustling the olive trees, a dialogue with the gods who breathe life into the world. Yet life is not all celebration. The specter of hardship looms large. A drought could parch your fields, leaving your family to ration barley and pray for rain. A child might fall ill, their fever a quiet terror that sends you to a local healer, a woman whose knowledge of herbs is said to come from Asclepius himself. You might offer a small votiva clay figure, shaped like a limb, or a womb to a nearby shrine, its surface inscribed with a plea for recovery. These offerings, found in abundance by archaeologists, speak to the constant struggle of your life, the delicate balance between hope and fear. The gods, you know, are not always merciful. Their favor must be earned through devotion and care. In the evening, as the sun dips below the hills, you return home, the air now cool and fragrant with thyme. Your family gathers around the hearth, the fire's warmth a comfort after a long day. You share a simple meal, lentils flavored with wild herbs, bread baked on a hot stone, perhaps a few olives glistening with oil. As you eat, you tell stories of the gods, their passions and quarrels, their gifts and punishments. Your children listen, their eyes wide, learning the names of Zeus, Hera, and Aphrodite as naturally as they learn the feel of the earth beneath their feet. Later, as you prepare for sleep, you might offer a quiet prayer to Artemis, goddess of the moon, her silver light spilling through the doorway, asking her to guard your dreams. This life, though hard, is rich with meaning. The gods are not distant, but near, their presence felt in the rustle of leaves, the yield of the harvest, the warmth of your spouse beside you. Your worship is not a separate act, but a thread that runs through every moment, tying you to the land, the community, and the divine. As the night settles over your village, imagine standing at your door, the stars a silent witness to your prayers, the rhythm of your life a steady, comforting pulse. the Dionysian festivals and the life of a devotee, as the quiet of the rural village settles over you. Let us shift our gaze to a moment of vibrant celebration, where the boundaries between mortal and divine blur in a whirl of music and wine. Picture yourself now in the heart of Athens, the air thick with the scent of crushed grapes and burning resin, the streets alive with the pulse of a festival honoring Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation. In this segment, we follow the life of an imagined devout man named Cleon, a vintner whose devotion to Dionysus shaped his days and nights, and explore the great Dionysian festivals that defined Greek cultural and spiritual life. These events, with their blend of revelry and ritual, included practices that might startle us today, but were sacred to those who danced in the god's name. Settle in. Let the rhythm of Cleon's story carry you gently forward, as we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice. Cleon was born in the shadow of Athens' Acropolis, around 450 BCE, in a modest household where the vine was both livelihood and sacred trust. Imagine him as a young boy, his hands stained purple from helping his father tend the family's vineyard, the air heavy with the sweet Thames of ripening grapes. From an early age, Cleon learned that Dionysus was no distant deity, but a presence in the earth itself, his power flowing through the vines that curled around wooden stakes. Each season, Cleon's family offered the first press of wine to the god, pouring it onto a small altar in their courtyard, the dark liquid gleaming in the sunlight as they prayed for a bountiful harvest. As Cleon grew, so did his devotion. By his 20s, he was a skilled vintner, his days spent pruning vines, hauling baskets of grapes and treading them in a stone vat, the juice cool against his feet. Picture him pausing in the heat of the day, wiping sweat from his brow and murmuring a prayer to Dionysus, asking for strength to endure the labor and for the god's favor in the fermentation. His life was one of toil, but it was also one of joy, for Dionysus was a god who rewarded his followers with moments of transcendence, moments that came alive in the great festivals held in his honor. The most famous of these was the city Dionysia, held each spring in Athens, a spectacle that drew thousands to celebrate the god's gifts of wine, theater, and liberation. Imagine Cleon preparing for the festival, his heart light with anticipation. He joins a procession winding through the city, the streets lined with spectators, the air ringing with flutes and drums. Men and women carry baskets of figs, loaves of bread shaped like vines, and wooden fallowy symbols of fertility and Dionysus's life-giving power. These emblems, carried aloft on poles, are not objects of crude humor, but of reverence, a reminder of the god's role in renewing the earth and its people. Cleon, dressed in a simple tunic, carries a small amphora of his finest wine, an offering for the temple altar, its clay surface etched with ivy leaves. The procession leads to the theater of Dionysus, nestled at the foot of the Acropolis, where the festival's heart beats strongest. Here, tragedies and comedies plays born from the god's worship are performed, their stories weaving tales of human struggle and divine intervention. Cleon sits among the crowd, the stone benches cool. Beneath him, as actors in masks recite lines that echo the god's own duality, joy and madness, creation and destruction. Between performances, priests pour libations, the wine pooling on the altar like a dark mirror, and choruses sing hymns to Dionysus, their voices rising in a hypnotic rhythm. Cleon feels the god's presence, not as a distant force, but as a pulse, in his own blood, stirred by the music and the shared devotion. But the Dionysian festivals were not confined to theaters or city streets. In rural areas, and even in Athens during festivals like the Lenia or Anthesteria, the celebrations took on a wilder hue. Picture Cleon joining a nighttime rite in a hillside grove, the air thick with the scent of pine and burning torches. Here, devotees, men and women alike, though often led by the Maenads, Dionysus's frenzied female followers dance to the beat of drums, their bodies swaying as if possessed. The Maenads, their hair loose and crowned with ivy, are said to channel the god spirit, their movements a blend of ecstasy and reverence. Cleon, though not a Maenad, feels the pull of the god's power, his feet moving to the rhythm, his mind light with wine and worship. These rites, though sacred, could seem startling to us. The Maenads, in their fervor, might tear at their clothing, or offer symbolic acts of creation, their dances mimicking the act of life itself. Wine flowed freely, loosening inhibitions, and the boundaries between sacred and sensual dissolved. Yet to Cleon and his fellow devotees, these acts were not licentious, but divine. A way to honor the god who blurred the lines between mortal and immortal. The Greeks saw no shame in celebrating the body's vitality, for it was Dionysus who gifted them this freedom, this momentary escape from the grind of daily life. Cleon's devotion was not without its costs. The festivals demanded time and resources, wine for offerings, animals for sacrifice, days away from the vineyard. And Dionysus was a god of extremes, his worship sometimes leading to excess. Stories whispered of Maenads lost to their frenzy, of devotees who drank too deeply and stumbled into danger. Cleon, though, was disciplined, his devotion tempered by the practical needs of his trade. He knew that God's gifts came with a price, that the vine could yield both joy and ruin. When a blight struck his vineyard, he did not curse Dionysus, but doubled his offerings, kneeling in the dust to pray for mercy, his hands clutching a clay figurine shaped like a bunch of grapes. As Cleon aged, his role in the festivals grew. He became a respected figure, his wine sought after for temple offerings, his presence a fixture at the Dionysia. Picture him in his later years, his hair streaked with gray, standing before a village altar, pouring a libation as younger men look on. His life, like the vine, followed a cycle: growth, harvest, dormancy, renewal, each phase marked by devotion to the god who shaped it. When he died, his family buried him with a small amphora, its surface painted with scenes of Dionysus's revels, a final offering to the god who had guided his days. The Dionysian festivals, through Cleon's eyes, reveal a world where worship was both celebration and surrender, where the gods demanded not just prayers, but participation. As the music of the festival fades in your mind, let this story settle, a gentle rhythm to carry you forward. The cult of Aphrodite and its sacred spaces, as the vibrant pulse of the Dionysian festivals, softens into memory. Let us turn our attention to a quieter, yet equally profound, aspect of Greek worship. Picture yourself now standing on a rocky promontory, overlooking the turquoise waters of the Aegean, perhaps on the island of Cythera, where the air is fragrant with wild roses and the distant hum of waves. Here, in sacred spaces dedicated to Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and desire, the Greeks sought to honor the divine force that stirred the heart and bound the mortal to the eternal. In this segment, we explore the cult of Aphrodite, its rituals, and the archaeological traces that reveal its significance. Touching on practices that might seem startling, yet were woven into the fabric of Greek spirituality. Settle in. Let the gentle rhythm of this sacred world guide you forward, as we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice. Aphrodite's worship was widespread. Her sanctuaries scattered across Greece, from bustling cities to remote islands. Imagine yourself approaching one such sanctuary. A small temple perched on a cliff, its white marble columns gleaming in the sunlight. The path is lined with myrtle trees, their leaves rustling softly and offering seashells, polished stones. Ribbons dangle from their branches, left by devotees seeking the goddess's favor. The temple itself is modest, its interior cool and dim, scented with the faint sweetness of burning frankincense. At its heart stands a statue of Aphrodite, her form carved with grace, her eyes seeming to follow you as you step closer. You place a small offering, a vial of perfume, perhaps, or a lock of your hair on the altar, whispering a prayer for love, harmony, or fertility. The cult of Aphrodite was unique, blending reverence with the celebration of human desire, unlike the solemn rites of Demeter or the frenzied worship of Dionysus. Aphrodite's rituals were intimate, often personal, yet deeply communal. Her sanctuaries were places where Greeks came to seek her blessings for marriage, childbirth, or even the fleeting passion of a new romance. Picture a young woman, her hands trembling slightly, dedicating a pair of doves sacred to the goddess to ensure a happy union. Or a sailor, his skin weathered by the sea, offering a pearl to Aphrodite Pontia of the sea, for safe passage and a lover's embrace upon his return. These acts, though personal, were part of a shared devotion, a recognition that love was a divine force, as vital as the harvest or the tides. The rituals of Aphrodite's cult often embraced the sensual, reflecting her role as the goddess of creation. In some sanctuaries, particularly in places like Corinth, her worship included practices that might surprise us today. Sacred prostitution, as described by ancient sources like Herodotus, was said to occur in certain temples where women, often called hieroduloi, or sacred servants, offered their bodies as an act of devotion. Imagine a temple courtyard in Corinth, the air warm with the scent of blooming jasmine, where such a servant, clad in fine linen, performs her role with dignity, her actions seen not as commerce but as a sacred gift to the goddess. To the Greeks, this was not degrading, but holy, a way to honor Aphrodite's power to unite and create. These women, often supported by the temple, were respected. Their earnings used to maintain the sanctuary or fund festivals. Archaeology offers glimpses into these sacred spaces. Excavations at Aphrodite's temple in Corinth have uncovered terracotta figurines of the goddess, their surfaces painted with delicate care, alongside offerings of jewelry, mirrors, and clay doves. In Cythera, a sanctuary revealed altars stained with the residue of honeyed wine, poured in libations to the goddess. These artifacts, small and unassuming, speak to the intimacy of her worshipped devotees, left not grand monuments, but personal tokens, each one a whisper of hope or gratitude. The discovery of phallic or yonic symbols, carved in stone or molded in clay, further underscores the cult's focus on fertility, not as a crude obsession, but as a celebration of life's generative spark. Yet Aphrodite's cult was not without its complexities. Her worship demanded balance, for her gifts could bring joy or ruin. A lover's passion could lead to harmony or jealousy. A marriage blessed by the goddess could flourish or falter. Devotees knew this, and their rituals often included prayers. For moderation, picture a festival in Aphrodite's honor. Perhaps the Aphrodisia, where a procession winds through the city, carrying garlands of roses and myrtle. The crowd sings hymns, their voices soft but fervent, praising the goddess as golden and laughter-loving. Priests and priestesses offer sacrifices, goats or doves, their blood carefully collected to avoid defiling the altar while dancers perform, their movements graceful, echoing the goddess's own allure. These acts, though vibrant, are restrained, a reminder that Aphrodite's power must be respected, not indulged recklessly. The cult also bridged the lives of the elite and the common folk. While a wealthy woman might dedicate a silver mirror to Aphrodite's temple, a farmer's wife might offer a simple clay figure, yet both sought the same blessings. In rural areas, Aphrodite's worship was earthier, tied to the fertility of fields and flocks. Imagine a village altar, a rough stone slab surrounded by wildflowers, where a shepherd leaves a handful of wool, praying for his ewes to bear healthy lambs. The goddess, in her many forms, Aphrodite Pandemos, of all the people, or Aphrodite Ourania, heavenly united these worlds, her presence a constant in the Greek heart. The struggles of devotion were real, even for Aphrodite's followers. A failed romance could leave a devotee questioning the goddess's favor. A barren marriage could prompt desperate offerings. Temples often housed oracles or priestesses who interpreted dreams or omens, guiding worshippers through their fears. Picture a woman kneeling before a priestess, her hands clutching a woven ribbon, seeking advice on a troubled love. The priestess, her voice calm, might suggest a pilgrimage to a distant sanctuary, or a simple act of bath in a sacred spring, a prayer at dawn to restore harmony. These moments, though heavy with emotion, were handled with care. The goddess's power a source of hope rather than despair, as you stand in the imagined temple. The sea breeze stirring the air, let the weight of Aphrodite's worship settle over you. Her cult was a celebration of life's beauty and complexity, a reminder that love, like the gods, was both gift and challenge. The rhythm of her rituals, offerings, hymns, quiet prayers mirrors the steady pulse of the Greek world, carrying you gently toward rest. The priests and priestesses of the gods, as the serene presence of Aphrodite's temple lingers in your mind, let us shift our focus to those who served as the bridge between mortals and the divine, the priests and priestesses of ancient Greece. Picture yourself now in the sacred precinct of Delphi, where the air is crisp with the scent of laurel and the distant murmur of a sacred spring echoes against the rocky slopes of Mount Parnassus. These figures, revered and set apart, lived lives of devotion, their days shaped by rituals that honored the gods, including practices that might seem unusual to us but were central to Greek spirituality. In this segment, we explore the world of these religious elites, contrasting their structured, sacred existence with the daily lives of ordinary worshippers, and delve into the intimate roles they played in guiding the faithful. Settle in, let the steady rhythm of their duties carry you gently forward as we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice. Imagine a priestess of Apollo, named Urine, standing before the great oracle at Delphi. Her robes, dyed a deep indigo, flow softly as she moves, her hair crowned with a wreath of laurel leaves, sacred to the god. Erin's life is one of service, her days governed by the temple's rhythms rather than the demands of field or loom. Unlike the farmer or weaver, whose worship is woven into daily tasks, Erin's existence is wholly dedicated to the divine. She rises before dawn, her breath visible in the cool mountain air, to tend the sacred fire, ensuring it burns steadily, as a symbol of Apollo's eternal presence. Her hands, steady and practiced, arrange offerings on the altar honey cakes. Sprigs of laurel, a vial of oil each, act a silent prayer for the gods' favor. The role of priests and priestesses varied across Greece, but their purpose was singular: to mediate between the gods and humanity. In major sanctuaries like Delphi, Olympia, or Eleusis, they were often drawn from elite families, their status lending weight to their sacred duties. Picture Irene as a woman of noble birth, chosen for her piety and wisdom, trained from youth to interpret the gods' will. Her life, though privileged, is not one of leisure. She fasts before oracular sessions, her body purified by spring water, her mind focused through prayer and ritual. When supplicants arrive, kings, merchants, or farmers seeking guidance, she enters the Adyton, a sacred chamber, where the scent of burning herbs mingles with the faint mist rising from a chasm in the earth. Her words, believed to channel Apollo's voice, are cryptic, their meaning a puzzle for the listener to unravel. The rituals these figures oversaw often touched on the intimate aspects of life, particularly in cults tied to fertility and love. In temples of Aphrodite or Demeter, priestesses might lead ceremonies that celebrated creation, guiding devotees through offerings or dances that honored the gods' generative power. Imagine a priestess in a sanctuary of Demeter, her hands raising a clay figure shaped like a womb, its surface painted with ochre, as she prays for the community's fertility. These acts, though striking to us, were sacred, performed with solemnity and care. In some temples, priests or priestesses might oversee rites involving symbolic unions, perhaps a ritual marriage between two devotees. Their vows, sealed with offerings to Aphrodite, seen as a way to ensure divine blessings for the community. Contrast this with the life of an ordinary Greek. Like the farmer we met earlier, whose worship is practical, tied to survival. While Irene's days are spent in the temple, the farmer's are spent in the fields, his prayers whispered between tasks. His offerings are modest: a handful of grain, a splash of wine, while Irene handles golden-laid vessels or sacrificial animals, their blood carefully channeled to avoid defiling the altar. Yet both share a common thread: the belief that the gods demand devotion, their favor a fragile gift. The farmer might visit Irene at Delphi, offering a small coin to ask about his harvest, his weathered hands clasped in hope as she delivers the oracle's words. Her role elevates her, but it also isolates her, her life bound to the temple's walls while the farmer returns to his fields. Priests and priestesses faced their own struggles. Their authority depended on the gods' perceived favor, and a failed prophecy or a barren season could cast doubt on their sanctity. Imagine Irene, her face composed but her heart heavy. As a drought grips the land, whispers spreading that Apollo is displeased. She might double her offerings, spending hours in prayer, her knees pressed against the cold stone floor. The weight of her role is immense. She is not just a servant, but a conduit, her words shaping the fates of cities and individuals. In smaller sanctuaries, priests might live closer to the community, their lives less grand, but no less demanding. A priest of Asclepius in a rural shrine, for instance, might spend his days tending the sick, his hands stained with herbal salves, his prayers blending with the groans of the afflicted. Archaeology reveals the tangible traces of their world. At Delphi, excavators uncovered the foundations of the Temple of Apollo, its altars stained with the residue of countless offerings. Votive statues, some depicting priests or priestesses, stand with serene expressions, their robes carved in intricate folds. In sanctuaries of Aphrodite, small mirrors, combs, and clay doves speak to the intimate nature of her worship, gifts left by devotees under the guidance of her priestesses. These artifacts, though silent, carry the weight of countless prayers, each one a testament to the sacred bond between mortal and divine. The elite status of priests and priestesses set them apart. Yet their lives were not without sacrifice. They often lived celibate or secluded lives, their personal desires secondary to their divine duties. Green, for instance, might never marry, her heart dedicated to Apollo alone. This contrasts sharply with the farmer's wife, whose prayers to Aphrodite are for a fruitful marriage, her nightly offerings a quiet act of hope. Both, however, seek the same end: harmony with the gods, a life blessed by their presence. The priestess's world is one of ritual precision, her every act a performance of devotion, while the farmer's is one of earthy necessity, his worship. Woven into the soil, he teals as you imagine Irene standing before the temple, the wind stirring her robes. Let the rhythm of her life settle over you. Her world, though elevated, is one of constant vigilance, a delicate balance between mortal need and divine will. The gods, through her, speak to all Greeks, their voices a steady hum in the fabric of existence. The artisan's craft and divine inspiration, as the sacred duties of the priests and priestesses linger in your mind. Let us return to the rhythm of ordinary life, where the hands of artisans shaped both the material and spiritual world of ancient Greece. Picture yourself now in a bustling workshop in Corinth. The air thick with the scent of wet clay and wood smoke, the soft clatter of tools filling the space. Here, potters, weavers, and sculptors labored, their work not only a trade, but a form of worship, each creation a quiet offering to the gods who inspired their craft. In this segment, we immerse ourselves in the daily life of an artisan, focusing on how their devotion to deities like Athena and Hephaestus intertwined with practices that celebrated creation, including those tied to the intimate forces of life. Settle in. Let the steady rhythm of their work guide you gently forward, as we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice. Imagine yourself as Lysandra, a potter in her small workshop, the walls lined with shelves of drying vessels. The morning. Light filters through a high window, casting a warm glow on the clay-stained floor. You rise early, your hands already itching to shape the earth's gifts. Before you begin, you pause at a small altar in the corner, where a terracotta figurine of Athena, goddess of crafts and wisdom, stands watch. You sprinkle a pinch of barley onto a shallow dish, the grains scattering like tiny offerings, and murmur a prayer for skill and patience. This simple act, repeated each day, grounds you, tying your labor to the divine forces that guide your hands. Your workshop is a hive of activity, the air alive with the hum of a spinning wheel and the soft thump of clay being kneaded. As a potter, your life is one of precision and endurance. Your days spent shaping amphorae for wine, kylixes for drinking, or votive figures for temples. Each piece is a labor of love, its surface smoothed by your fingers, its curves a reflection of the goddess's wisdom. You might paint a scene of Aphrodite rising from the sea, her form graceful on the side of a vase, or etch a simple prayer to Hephaestus, god of artisans, into the base of a bowl. These creations are not mere objects, but offerings, their beauty a tribute to the gods who inspire them. The Greeks saw no separation between craft and worship. As you work, you feel Athena's presence in the rhythm of the wheel, its steady turn, mirroring the cycles of life itself. When you fire your pots in the kiln, the flames licking the clay, you whisper to Hephaestus, asking him to temper the heat just right. Your craft is a dialogue with the divine, each vessel a small prayer made tangible. In the marketplace, when you sell an amphora to a merchant, you might dedicate a portion of the profit to Athena's temple. A coin slipped into an offering box, its clink a quiet act of gratitude, but your devotion extends beyond your craft too. The broader rhythms of worship, particularly those tied to fertility and creation, forces sacred to deities like Aphrodite and Demeter. In your village, festivals mark the turning of the seasons, and you join the community in honoring these gods. Picture yourself in a spring procession, the air fragrant with blooming hyacinths. Carrying a clay figurine, you crafted a stylized phallus or a rounded symbol of the womb, painted with care. These objects, startling to our modern eyes, are sacred to the Greeks, symbols of the life force that sustains fields and families. You place your offering on a communal altar, its stone surface crowded with similar gifts as a priestess pours honeyed wine into the earth, her voice chanting a hymn to Demeter. These festivals are moments of unity, where artisans, farmers, and merchants come together, their voices blending in songs that praise the gods' generative power. The dances, slow and deliberate, mimic the sowing of seeds or the embrace of lovers. Their movements, a celebration of life's continuity. There is no shame in these acts, no sense of impropriety. To you, they are as natural as the clay you shape, a way to honor the gods who ensure the earth's bounty and the community's survival. The festival ends with a shared meal: barley bread, olives, a sip of wine each, bite a reminder of the God's gifts. Your life, though, is not without struggle. The clay might crack in the kiln, a week's work reduced to shards. A poor market day could leave you short of coin, the specter of hunger, a quiet worry. In these moments, you turn to the gods, visiting a local shrine to Asclepius if illness strikes your family, offering a small clay votive shaped like a hand or a heart, its surface inscribed with a plea for healing. These offerings, found in abundance by archaeologists, speak to the artisan's constant hope, their trust in the gods to ease their burdens. The temple's walls, lined with such gifts, are a mosaic of human need, each piece a story of faith and resilience. In the evening, as you clean your tools, the workshop quiet, but for the crackle of the dying fire. You might share stories with your apprentice, a young girl learning the craft. You tell her of Athena's wisdom, of how the goddess wove the first loom, her fingers deft as yours strive to be. These tales, passed down through generations, are as much a part of your work as the clay itself, binding you to the divine and to the community that depends on your skill. As you lock the workshop door, the stars above gleam softly, and you offer a final prayer to Artemis, her moonlight casting shadows across the courtyard, asking for protection through the night. The artisan's life is one of creation and devotion, each act a thread in the tapestry of Greek spirituality. Your hands, stained with clay, are tools of the gods, shaping not just vessels, but a connection to the divine. As the workshop fades into the quiet of the night, let this rhythm settle over you, a gentle pulse to carry you forward. The life of a Maenad and the Bacchae writes as the quiet hum of the artisan's workshop fades into the stillness of the night. Let us turn to a figure whose devotion carried her into the wild heart of divine ecstasy. Picture yourself now on a forested hillside near Thebes, the air cool and heavy with the scent of pine and wild ivy, the distant rhythm of drums pulsing through the darkness. Here, in the thrall of Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and liberation, we follow the life of an imagined Maenad named Thalia, a woman whose worship took her beyond the boundaries of ordinary life into the sacred frenzy of the Bacchic rites. These rituals, vibrant and sometimes unsettling, were a cornerstone of Dionysian worship, blending devotion with practices that might seem startling, yet were profoundly sacred to the Greeks. Settle in. Let the rhythm of Thalia's story guide you gently forward. As we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice, Thalia was born in a small village near Thebes around 420 BCE, a family of modest means, her father a shepherd, her mother a weaver. Imagine her as a young girl, her hair loose and tangled, running through the meadows with a garland of wildflowers, her laughter mingling with the bleating of goats. From an early age, she felt the pull of Dionysus, his presence in the vines that grew on the hillsides, his spirit in the songs sung at harvest festivals. Her first taste of wine, diluted and shared at a family altar, was a revelation, a spark of the god's power that warmed her blood and stirred her soul. As she grew, her devotion deepened, drawing her to the Maenads. the female followers of Dionysus, whose ecstatic worship was both revered and feared. By her late teens, Thalia had joined Thiassos, a sacred band of women dedicated to the god. Picture her standing among them, her tunic simple but adorned with ivy leaves, her eyes bright with anticipation. The Maenads were not ordinary worshippers. They were believed to be possessed by Dionysus himself, their bodies and spirits vessels for his divine energy. Their rites, known as the Bacchic, or Dionysian mysteries, took place in the wilderness, far from the ordered world of village or city where the god's presence was strongest. Thalia's life, once tied to the loom and hearth, now revolved around these nocturnal gatherings. Her days spent preparing offerings and her nights lost in the god's embrace. Imagine Thalia joining a Bacchic right under a full moon. The hillside, aglow with torchlight, the air thick with the scent of crushed grapes and burning resin. The Maenads, their hair unbound, carry Thiassos staffs topped with pine cones and twined with ivy symbols of Dionysus's power. The drums begin, their rhythms slow at first, then quickening, pulling Thalia into a dance that feels both ancient and alive. She sways, her feet bare against the cool earth, her voice joining the others in a hymn to the god. O Bacchus, liberator, come with your joy. Wine flows freely, poured from clay craters into shallow cups, each sip a communion with the divine. The Maenads drink deeply, their movements growing wilder, their laughter mingling with cries that echo through the trees. These rites, though sacred, could seem shocking to us. The Maenads, in their frenzy, might tear at their clothing, their bodies glistening with sweat and wine, their dances mimicking the act of creation or the chase of lovers. Some ancient sources, like Euripides' Bacchae, describe Maenads in a state of divine madness, capable of superhuman feat tearing apart animals with their bare hands or drawing milk from the earth. These stories, likely exaggerated, reflect the Greeks' awe and unease at the Maenads' power. For Thalia, though, this was not chaos, but transcendence, a moment when the boundaries between mortal and divine dissolved. Her dance was an offering, her ecstasy a gift to Dionysus, who rewarded his followers with liberation from the burdens of daily life. Yet Thalia's life was not all ecstasy. The Maenads' rites were demanding, both physically and socially. Joining the Thiassos meant leaving behind the routines of village life, sometimes for days, which could strain family ties. Imagine Thalia's mother, her hands busy at the loom, worrying as her daughter vanished into the hills. The rites themselves were exhausting, the dances leaving Thalia's body aching, her voice hoarse from singing. And there was always the risk of excess. Too much wine, too much fervor, could lead to injury or scandal. The Greeks respected the Maenads, but also feared them. Their wildness a reminder of Dionysus's dual nature, joy and destruction entwined. Thalia's devotion extended beyond the rites. In her daily life, she tended a small vineyard, her hands calloused from pruning vines, her prayers to Dionysus as constant as the sun's arc. She crafted offerings, small clay figures of satyrs or grape clusters for local shrines, each one a plea for the god's favor. When illness struck her family, she might visit a temple of Asclepius, offering a votive shaped like a foot, her heart heavy with hope. These moments, though quieter than the Bacchic rites, were no less sacred, tying her to the broader tapestry of Greek worship. Archaeology offers traces of the Maenads' world. Excavations near Thebes have uncovered sanctuaries dedicated to Dionysus, their altars stained with wine and ash, surrounded by fragments of Thiassos tips and clay masks worn in rituals. Votive reliefs depict dancing women, their forms fluid and ecstatic, their faces turned to the heavens. These artifacts, though mute, speak to the intensity of Dionysian worship, its blend of reverence and release. They also hint at the Maenads' social role, respected yet apart. There lives a bridge between the ordered world and the wild. As Thalia aged, her role in the Thiassos evolved. She became a leader, guiding younger women through the rites, her voice steady as she taught them the hymns and dances. Picture her in her later years, her hair streaked with silver, standing before a firelit altar, pouring a libation as the drums begin. Her life, like the God she served, was one of psychosecstasy and rest, devotion, and labor. When she died, her Thiassos buried her with a small amphora of wine, its surface painted with scenes of Dionysus's revels, a final offering to the god who had shaped her soul. Thalia's story, woven into the Bacchic rites, reveals a world where worship was both freedom and surrender, where the gods demanded not just prayers, but passion. As the drums fade in your mind, let this tale settle, a gentle rhythm to carry you forward. The cult of Artemis and the wilderness sanctuaries, as the wild rhythm of the Bacchic rites fades into the quiet of the night. Let us turn to a different divine presence, one that dwells in the untamed spaces of ancient Greece. Picture yourself now in a moonlit grove deep in the forests of the Peloponnese, where the air is cool and scented with pine and wild mint, and the distant howl of a wolf echoes softly. Here in the sacred sanctuaries dedicated to Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, and protector of the young, the Greeks sought to honor a deity both nurturing and fierce. In this segment, we explore the cult of Artemis, its rituals, and the archaeological traces that reveal its significance, touching on practices that might seem unusual but were deeply woven into the Greek spiritual landscape. Settle in. Let the gentle rhythm of this sacred world guide you forward as we weave this tale with a calm, Soothing voice. Artemis's sanctuaries were often set apart, nestled in wild places, groves, mountains, or marshlands where the boundaries of civilization blurred. Imagine yourself approaching one such sanctuary, perhaps at Broron near Athens, its low stone walls half hidden by reeds and wildflowers. The path is narrow, marked by small offerings, clay figurines of deer, arrows, or crescent moons, left by devotees. The air hums with the soft chirping of crickets, and a faint glow from oil lamps guides you to the temple's entrance. Inside, a statue of Artemis stands, her bow drawn, her gaze serene yet commanding. You place a small offering woven ribbon, a sprig of laurel on the altar, whispering a prayer for protection, for a safe birth, or for guidance through the wilderness of life. The cult of Artemis was multifaceted, reflecting her dual nature as both protector and hunter. She was the goddess who guarded young girls and boys before marriage, yet also the bringer of swift death to those who defied her. Her worshippers included hunters, midwives, and young women preparing for adulthood, all seeking her favor in their transitions and trials. Picture a group of young girls, known as Little Bears, participating in the Broronia festival at Broron. They wear saffron robes, their movements slow and deliberate as they dance in a circle, mimicking the bear, an animal sacred to Artemis. This ritual, a rite of passage, prepares them for womanhood. Their steps a quiet offering to the goddess who watches over their youth. The rituals of Artemis's cult often embraced themes of fertility and protection, though in ways distinct from the sensual rites of Aphrodite or the frenzied dances of Dionysus. At some sanctuaries, offerings included symbols of creation, clay figures shaped like wombs or infants, left by women praying for safe childbirth. Imagine a young mother, her hands trembling slightly, dedicating a small votive at the altar, its surface painted with care, as she seeks Artemis's aid in the perilous act of bringing new life. These acts were sacred, performed with reverence, their focus not on passion but on survival, on the delicate thread that tied mother and child to the goddess's mercy. Archaeology has uncovered rich evidence of Artemis's worship at Broron. Excavators found pits filled with thousands of votive offerings, terracotta figurines, bronze pins, and small loom weights left by girls and women over centuries. These artifacts, delicate and worn, speak to the intimate nature of the cult, each piece a tangible prayer. Altars stained with the residue of milk or honey libations suggest rituals of nurturing, while stone reliefs depicting Artemis with her bow or surrounded by animals reveal her wild, untamed essence. In other sanctuaries, like the one at Ephesus, grander temples house statues of the goddess adorned with symbols of fertility, multiple breasts, or egg-like forms, reflecting her role as a protector of life's beginnings. The rites of Artemis could seem startling to us, particularly in their raw connection to the wilderness. In some myths, her devotees performed acts of symbolic sacrifice, offering animal hides or bloodless gifts to appease her fierce side. Picture a hunter, his hands stained with earth, leaving the first kill of the season, deer's antler, or a rabbit's pelt at a forest shrine, praying for Artemis's favor in future hunts. These acts, though rooted in the harsh realities of survival, are not gruesome but reverent, a recognition of the goddess's dominion over life and death. Even in urban sanctuaries, her worship retained this wild edge, with hymns praising her as mistress of beasts and dances that echoed the movements of deer or wolves. Yet the cult was not without its challenges. Artemis was a demanding goddess, her favor hard-won. A failed hunt, a difficult birth, or a plague among the young could be seen as signs of her displeasure, prompting devotees to redouble their offerings. Imagine a midwife, her face lined with worry, kneeling before a shrine after a birth gone wrong, her hands clutching a clay figurine as she prays for forgiveness. The priests and priestesses of Artemis, often women chosen for their purity, bore the weight of interpreting these signs, their voices calm but firm as they guided the community through rituals of appeasement. Their lives, like those of other religious elites, were set apart. Their devotion, a constant thread in the fabric of Greek life. The cult also bridged the worlds of the elite and the common folk. While a wealthy Athenian might dedicate a silver statuette to Artemis's temple, a shepherd's wife might offer a simple clay figure, yet both sought the same protection. In rural areas, Artemis's worship was practical, tied to the survival of flocks and families. Picture a shepherd pausing at a mountain shrine, his staff resting against a stone, as he ties a woolen thread to a tree branch, praying for his goats to thrive. In cities, her festivals were grander, with processions and choral performances. But the heart of her worship remained the same, a plea for safety in a world where life was fragile. As you stand in the imagined grove, the moonlight casting shadows across the altar, let the weight of Artemis's worship settle over you. Her cult was a celebration of life's wildness and fragility, a reminder that the gods walked in both the forest and the heart. The rhythm of her rituals, offerings, dances, quiet prayers mirrors the steady pulse of the Greek world, carrying you gently toward rest. The oracles and their divine influence, as the moonlit grove of Artemis fades into the quiet of the night. Let us turn our gaze to those who held a unique place in ancient Greek society, their voices carrying the weight of the gods themselves. Picture yourself now in the bustling city of Athens, standing at the edge of a sacred precinct. The air tinged with the scent of burning laurel and the faint hum of a crowd awaiting divine guidance. Here, the oracle's men and women believed. To channel the gods' will served as spiritual and social linchpins. There lives a stark contrast to the daily toil of ordinary Greeks. In this segment, we explore the world of these revered figures, their rituals, and the practices that intertwined. Devotion with the intimate concerns of life, contrasting their elevated status with the humble routines of the common folk. Settle in. Let the rhythm of their sacred duties guide you gently forward, as we weave this tale with a calm, soothing voice. Imagine a woman named Pythia, the most famous oracle of Apollo at Delphi, seated on a tripod in the temple's inner sanctum. Her robes, woven with fine threads, dyed deep crimson, fall softly around her, and a crown of laurel rests on her brow, its sharp scent mingling with the smoke of burning herbs. Pythia's life is one of profound responsibility, her days shaped by the demands of the god she serves. Unlike the farmer or artisan, whose worship is woven into daily tasks, Pythia's existence is wholly dedicated to Apollo. She rises before dawn, purifying herself in the Castalian spring. Its waters cold against her skin, preparing her body and mind to receive the god's voice. Her role is not just spiritual, but social, guiding kings, generals, and commoners through the uncertainties of life. The oracles were often drawn from elite or respected families, their status amplified by their divine connection. Picture Pythia as a woman chosen for her piety and clarity of mind, trained to interpret the cryptic messages that flow through her in a trance-like state. Her sessions are carefully orchestrated. Supplicants wait in a colonnaded hall, their offerings gold, coins, sacrificial goats, or woven textiles piling up at the altar. The air is thick with anticipation, the scent of myrrh heavy as priests chant hymns to Apollo. When Pythia speaks, her words are enigmatic, a riddle that might shape the fate of a city or a single soul. A farmer seeking guidance on a drought might hear, "The earth will yield when the sun turns kind," leaving him to ponder the god's intent. The oracle's rituals often touched on the intimate aspects of life, particularly those tied to fertility, marriage, and survival, concerns central to Greek worship. At Delphi, supplicants might ask about childbirth or love, their questions whispered to priests who relay them to Pythia. Imagine a young woman, her hands clutching a clay votive shaped like a child, asking Apollo to bless her with a healthy birth. Pythia's response, delivered in a low, rhythmic voice, might guide her to a ritual, perhaps an offering to Artemis or a pilgrimage to a sacred spring. These acts, though less overt than the fertility rites of Aphrodite or Dionysus, were sacred, their focus on life's continuation, a thread in the tapestry of Greek devotion. Contrast this with the life of an ordinary Greek. Like the vintner Cleon. From an earlier segment, while Pythia's days are spent in the temple, Cleon's are spent in the vineyard, his prayers to Dionysus murmured between tasks. His offerings are simpler splash of wine, a handful of grapes, while Pythia handles treasures from across Greece, her altar gleaming with silver and bronze. Yet both seek the god's favor, their lives bound by the same divine rhythm. Cleon might travel to Delphi, his tunic dusty from the journey, to ask about his failing vines, his heart heavy as he offers a small coin. Pythia's words, though distant, are a lifeline, her role elevating her above the crowd while tying her to their hopes. The oracles faced unique struggles. Their authority rested on their perceived connection to the gods, and a misinterpreted prophecy could spark doubt or unrest. Picture Pythia, her face composed but her heart racing. As a city blames her for a failed campaign, their whispers of Apollo's displeasure echoing through the sanctuary. She might spend hours in prayer, her knees pressed against the cold stone, seeking to restore the god's favor. In smaller oracles, like those of local heroes or minor deities, the pressure was less intense but no less real. A village oracle, perhaps a woman tending a shrine to a nymph, might guide her community through a plague, her hands trembling as she interprets signs in the flight of birds or the ripples of a spring. Archaeology reveals the oracle's world. In vivid detail, at Delphi excavators uncovered the Temple of Apollo's foundations, its Atatona's sunken chamber still bearing traces of the herbs burned during rituals. Votive offerings, from bronze tripods to clay figurines, crowd the site, each one a testament to the supplicant's faith. In other sanctuaries, like Dodona, where Zeus's oracles spoke through the rustling of oak leaves, archaeologists found bronze tablets inscribed with questions. Will my wife bear a son? Should I sail to Sicily? These artifacts, small but poignant, speak to the oracle's role in weaving the divine into the fabric of human life. The oracle's lives were set apart, often marked by celibacy or seclusion, their personal desires sacrificed to their sacred role. Pythia, for instance, might never marry, her heart bound to Apollo alone. While a farmer's wife prays to Aphrodite for a fruitful union, her nightly offerings a quiet act of hope. The oracle's world is one of ritual precision, her every word a performance of divine will, while the farmer's is one of earthy necessity, his worship tied to the soil he tills. Yet both are united by their dependence on the gods, their lives a delicate balance between mortal need and divine favor. As you imagine Pythia seated on her tripod, the smoke curling around her, let the weight of her role settle over you. Her world, though elevated, is one of constant vigilance, a bridge between the human and the divine. The rhythm of her duty's purifications, prophecies, quiet prayers mirrors the steady pulse of Greek spirituality, carrying you gently toward rest. as the sacred words of the oracle fade into the stillness of the night. Let us step back from the ancient world and allow the rhythm of its stories to settle over you like a soft blanket. Picture yourself now, no longer in the groves of Artemis or the torchlit streets of Athens, but in a quiet space of your own, the air gentle and cool, the world hushed around you. We've journeyed together through the lives of Greek worshippers, farmers, poets, maenads, and oracles, each bound by a shared devotion to the gods who shaped their world. Their rituals, sometimes startling to our modern sensibilities, were as natural to them as the cycles of the sun and moon. Their prayers a constant thread weaving through the fabric of their days. We began in the humble villages, were ordinary. Greeks poured libations and carried symbols of life in spring processions, their hands stained with earth and hope. We walked with Sappho, her poetry a bridge to Aphrodite's heart, and stood in the sacred halls of Eleusis, where the mysteries of Demeter promised renewal. We reclined at the symposia of the elite, their refined rituals a contrast to the rustic. Festivals of the fields, and danced with Thalia, a Maenad lost in Dionysus's ecstasy. We knelt before Artemis's wilderness altars and listened to the oracles, their voices carrying the god's will. Through it all, we saw a people who lived with the divine, their worship a celebration of life's beauty and fragility, its joys and struggles. These practices offerings of wine, dances of creation. Whispered prayers were not mere superstition, but a way to make sense of a world where the gods were as real as the harvest, as close as the hearth's fire. The Greeks, whether elite or humble, saw no separation between the sacred and the sensual, the earthly and the divine. Their lives, though distant, echo in the artifacts they left behind. Clay figurines worn smooth by hopeful hands, altars stained with wine and honey, reliefs of dancing maenads and serene goddesses. Each object tells a story of faith, of a people who believed the gods walked among them, shaping their fields, their loves, their fates. Consider the farmer, pausing in his field to pour a libation, the earth drinking in his offering as he prayed. For Demeter's favor, or Sappho, her lyre humming under the stars, her verses a plea to Aphrodite for solace in longing. The Maenad's dance, wild yet sacred, was a surrender to Dionysus, while the oracle's cryptic words carried Apollo's wisdom to a waiting world. These acts, though varied, were united by a single truth. The gods were not distant, but near. Their presence felt in the rhythm of daily life, in the turning of seasons, in the warmth of a lover's embrace. Even the practices that seem strange to us phallic symbols in processions. Sacred unions in temples were expressions of this intimacy. A celebration of the life force that bound mortal to divine. The struggles of these worshippers were real. A failed harvest could mean hunger. A barren womb could break a heart. A misspoken prophecy could unsettle a city. Yet their faith endured, carried in the small clay votives left at shrines, in the hymns sung under moonlit skies, in the quiet moments of prayer before sleep. The gods, they believed, were both generous and capricious. Their favor a gift to be earned through devotion, through offerings, through lives lived in harmony with their will. This belief shaped their world, from the humblest village to the grandest temple, a steady pulse that carried them through joy and sorrow. Now, as you rest in the comfort of your own time, imagine the contrast with that ancient world. Where the Greeks lit oil lamps to guide their prayers, you have the soft glow of modern light. Where they toiled in fields or danced in groves, you sit in quiet ease. The worries of their lives, distant yet familiar. Their rituals, though different, speak to a universal human need to find meaning, to seek connection, to honor the forces that shape our existence. The scent of their incense has faded. Their altars crumble to dust, but their stories linger. A gentle reminder of the rhythms that once governed their days. Let these images settle over you. The farmer's calloused hands, the poet's trembling voice, the Maenads' ecstatic steps, the oracle's steady gaze. They are not so different from us, their hopes and fears echoing across centuries. As you drift towards sleep, picture yourself lying on that same hillside where we began. The stars above, bright and unchanging, the air soft with the scent of olive groves. The gods may no longer walk among us, but their presence lingers in thee. Stories we tell in the quiet moments when we, too, seek something greater than ourselves. Let the rhythm of their world carry you gently into rest, into dreams, into the peace of the night. Good night, dear listener, and may your sleep be as calm as a Greek night under the watchful eyes of the stars.